Force majeure.
So what do you mean by that?
So that's essentially the act of God provision. So almost every contract, and if it's not in the contract, most common law um, in most states allow for relief from contractual obligations if there's something that's outside of the control of the party to perform. So an act of God or a pandemic. So the issue with the force majeure provisions is that most of them, I'd say 90% of them, carve out the obligation to pay rent. So they say if you can't perform under this contract because of an act of God, then you're not in default, unless it's because you're not paying rent. You always have to pay rent. So that doesn't really help with the non-payment of rent, but it does help with the covenant to continuously operate. It does help with construction obligations and timelines if you're building out your restaurant during this pandemic and things have slowed down. And arguably, it could help to extend the rent commencement date. A lot of our deals, we get 6 months or more to build out our restaurants without paying rent. If we're delayed because of this, there's an argument to be made that because of the force majeure provision that the rent commencement date should be pushed out because of that. Now, again, the only way to get any, to be confident that any interpretation of your lease is going to be correct is to go to court and have a judge tell you that it's correct. But if you're just trying to get some leverage to discuss a reasonable solution with your landlord and communicate with your landlord, a lot of these arguments can put a little bit of fear in them that if you're right, then it could impact them with the rest of their tenants and the rest of their properties. Again, if it's a national landlord, properties throughout the country.
All right, beautiful. So I think that's it. Those are the 9 items we're going to go over again. I'll summarize. These are the 9 strategies to resolve landlord-tenant relations during COVID-19. Number 1, pay your rent if you can. Don't be a slime ball. Pay your rent. Number 2, triple net only. Number 3, security deposits. Number 4, abatement. Number 5, forbearing rent extending terms. Those are if your landlord's willing to work with you, and if your landlord is not willing to work with you, condemnation provision, environmental provision, landlord default, and force majeure. I think I said it right that time.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us out. You can do it by liking, sharing, subscribing, and hitting that bell icon. It really helps out. And don't forget, there's a complete archive of every episode with show notes at restaurantunstoppable.com.